we actually were supposed to end last week and unfortunately had some serious technical challenges. So this is why today is the reboot edition. So you are truly welcome to this reboot edition of our sixth and final webinar in the EQ in Crisis Today we're talking about enhancing teamwork. How can we enhance teamwork? All right. How can we enhance teamwork is what we are talking about today. The reality is that the coronavirus is an unprecedented challenge for organization and their leadership teams around the world. How can you help your team to weather this storm and actually come out ahead on the other side? Welcome to this webinar. My name is Mucha Mlingo. I am an EQ fanatic and I am part of the 6 Seconds Global Network. 6 Seconds is a global nonprofit network practicing and sharing the learnable, measurable scientific skills of emotional intelligence. Founded in 1997, 6 Seconds is the first and largest organization that is 100% dedicated to the development of emotional intelligence. I run a boutique consultancy, PTS Africa, and we are a 6 Seconds preferred partner in this region. We are part of a global mission to have 1 billion people practicing emotional intelligence. And I believe that the skills of emotional intelligence are even more essential in this season of crisis. Before we continue, what I'd like to hear from you is from those who have been on this webinar before. If you have participated in any of the other webinars, I'd like to ask you to just share an insight that you have gained over the last 7 weeks. So anyone who has attended any of the webinars, I'd like to, at this time, take a moment to ask you to type up in the chat box and share anything that you have learned over the period that we have been interacting together. Please, I'll just give a few minutes just to gain some insights. If you would rather unmute yourself and share, you are welcome to do that as well. You can unmute yourself and share. What insights have you gained in the weeks that we've been talking about how to leverage emotional intelligence in this time of crisis? Please go ahead and either type in the chat box, or if you would rather, you can unmute yourself and share. Who would like to go first? Thank you very much, Elsie. I see your contribution. Emotions are data. Know myself, choose myself, give myself. I cannot ignore the data that emotions give. I must be intentional. Thank you so much for sharing that, Elsie. Anyone else would like to share? As I mentioned, you can type it in the chat box, or you can feel free to unmute yourself and share.
Hi, Mucha.
Hi.
Hi, this is Effie. I just realized my name is signed up as Jawabu, thanks to my son.
Okay.
So for me, my learnings have been staying connected, especially in this season. Why? Because yes, we can't ignore our emotions even in this season. So how can we make each other's day better by staying connected to each other?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Effie. You're very welcome. Anyone else would like to share? I'll give an extra minute for anyone else who would like to share. Thank you, Mary. The value of communication with clients and staff during this COVID times. Yes, very true. Thank you. We talked about that when I was sharing about delighting your customers in times of crisis. Thank you very much for sharing. So if there's anything else you'd like to share, feel free to add it, excuse me, feel free to add it to the chat box as we go along, and we will continue to review any of your thoughts in terms of what you have learned over this series of webinars. So moving on in terms of where we are today, I was looking at some statistics and looking at the numbers specifically across Africa. One of the things I shared in, I think, the very first webinar was that it's really important in order to maintain balance in this time of uncertainty that you really watch where it is that you are engaging with information and data. One of the things I like to do every once in a while is just look at the numbers to see where we are. And I pulled up these numbers with regards to the statistics that are specific for Africa, the numbers that we are seeing. And the reality is that we have not seen the kind of numbers across the continent that the rest of the world, well, more specifically in Europe and in the US, that they have seen. And I know that it means very many of us are caught in that stage where you're wondering, okay, is it about to happen, or are we going to escape the worst of it? So far, the confirmed cases, the number of deaths, and are not as high as would have been expected, especially considering the challenges that we face on the African continent. There are definitely African countries that have been far worse off, and there are those to date. Lesotho is still listed as a virus-free country. But what does this mean for us, and what does this mean for our teams? Because today we're focusing on our teams. Let me go back to the chat. I see some additional comments. Thank you. Victoria says, staying connected by LYC, loving my customers and staying in touch. Thank you very much for sharing that. Beatrice says, choosing to be optimistic. So making a choice, understanding that at the end of the day, there's a lot you may not have control over, but there's some things that you can make a decision about, and making the decision to be optimistic. Thank you. And Anne says, I've learned to focus on what I can control. So what does all of this mean in light of all these numbers that we're seeing, in light of all this information that is coming through about what is going on across the globe, what is going on across Africa, and more specifically, what's going on across East Africa? So what does this mean for us? And what does this mean for our teams? For those of us who are leading teams, how do we ensure that our teams are collaborating well, especially those who are working remotely for the first time? This is not something that they have done previously. So last week, before I had my technical issues, I shared this video. I want to share it again so that we can have a conversation about what teamwork is all about. So I'm going to play this video. It is a very short video of a Ferrari pit stop. And I'd like you to pay keen attention. And as you're watching the video, I'd like you to reflect on the question, what is teamwork? What does teamwork look like? All right, so that video runs for about just under 30 seconds. And the question I asked you to reflect on as you were watching the video is, what is teamwork? what does teamwork look like? All right. So what does teamwork look like? And feel free to either type in the chat box your thoughts, or you can unmute yourself and share. What does teamwork look like based on that video that we just watched? What does teamwork look like? What is teamwork? Please feel free to share either in the chat box, you can type it up, or you can unmute yourself and you can share. All right, so thank you, Elsie. Elsie says teamwork looks orderly, it looks coordinated. So, I think that's really important. Everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Thank you for that. Alice says teamwork is about coordination. Thank you very much for that, Alice. Anyone else? What does teamwork look like? And like I said, feel free to either share in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself. Victoria, teamwork is smooth, it is seamless. Thank you very much for that as well. Teamwork is smooth, it is seamless. Anyone else? What does teamwork look like to you? Effie, each one takes up a specialized role to contribute towards the success. Thank you very much for sharing. Effie, if you hadn't mentioned that was you, I would have called you Jabau. So Jawabu, actually, it's the other way around. Selma says, teamwork is every individual clear on what is required of them. Yes, thank you very much. Teamwork is everyone knowing what it is that they need to do. Awesome. What does teamwork look like? Victoria says it's clearly focused towards a particular goal. Clearly focused towards a particular goal. I love it. Thank you very much. Now, when we consider what teamwork looks like, and then we consider the current situation we find ourselves in, where teams are some working remotely for the very first time, teams are navigating this crisis and having to deal with the challenge, the reality that we find ourselves in. Organizations are struggling to try and figure out how to navigate this time we find ourselves in. You can just imagine that it becomes even harder to ensure that all of these things are a reality, the things that you talk about, this idea that we are focused clearly towards a particular goal, this idea that we are trusting each other to deliver, as Mary says, this idea that every individual is clear on what is required of them, and that everyone is taking up their role to contribute towards success, that this working together is smooth, is seamless, is coordinated. How do we make that happen in the midst of this crisis? How do we make that happen in the midst of this crisis? And really, that is what we are going to be exploring today. How do we make that happen in the midst of this crisis? Before we go any further, I shared yesterday that this is the last in the series. It's not the last thing we'll be doing online, but it's the last in this EQ in Crisis series. And also to celebrate our 10th birthday, we turn 10 next year, we are going to have some giveaways today. So, welcome and thank you for joining us. And you will, as part of being on this webinar, be able to participate in the giveaways that we are doing today. So I have Anne online. Anne works with me at PTS. And what Anne is going to do is she is going to make a note of everyone who's on the call. Because we are not together, we are going to do our raffle remotely. So Anne is going to take a piece of paper and write down everyone's name, and she's going to put all those names in a hat or in a bowl. And at the end of the webinar, we are going to pull out 3 individuals who will receive the 3 goodies that we are giving today. And I shared this on WhatsApp and on social media yesterday. So we are giving away 3 things. We are giving away an assessment, so the 6 seconds EQ assessment and a debrief session. We are also giving away a ticket to our pre-conference event, which is a invitation-only CEO forum. So we're giving away a ticket to that event. And then lastly, we are giving away a seat to a training that we will be hosting at the end of this month. And the training is a train the trainer for those for virtual learning. So we find ourselves in a situation where we're having to train individuals online. How do we do it? How do we ensure that we engage? How do we ensure that we connect and empower those that we are facilitating sessions for online? So we'll be having a training at the end of the month. And so those are the 3 giveaways that we have today. So as I mentioned, and we'll just make sure that everyone who joins the presentation today, their name will go on a piece of paper, separate pieces of paper, and then we will do a draw at the end. All right, so we're talking about teamwork, and we're talking about how do we make sure that all those things you said a team requires actually happen in this season of crisis? How do we make sure we're able to do all those things? I came across some statistics that look at employees who are working remotely and the challenges that they face. So this is a survey that was done in 2018. So this is pre-coronavirus. And so this is under normal circumstances. This is when things are normal, all right? Under normal circumstances, teams that are working remotely, these are the challenges they face. And the biggest challenge, 21% apiece, are loneliness and collaborating and communicating, all right? So collaborating really is teamwork. So working together as a team. So the biggest challenges that teams that work remotely face is loneliness and collaborating, communicating. There's also the challenge of distractions at home. I think you will all agree that that can be a very big challenge. Staying motivated. How do you stay committed and motivated when you are working remotely? There are time zone challenges. So for teams where individuals are working across different time zones, finding reliable Wi-Fi, and then other. And this is under normal circumstances. I'd like to imagine that right now, in this season of crisis, loneliness has become coupled with all the other emotional things that we have been feeling as a result of this crisis. And I think that the issue of working together and communicating remains a challenging one, especially because a lot of the teams that are working remotely haven't actually worked remotely before. So they're doing it for the first time. And so I imagine that those challenges have actually become even bigger. So how do we navigate this season? How do we navigate these challenges successfully? How do we ensure that our teams work together? Our teams collaborate with each other. So there's 3 tips that I would like to share with us today. 3 tips. And the first one is be human and create a sense of psychological safety. Create a sense of psychological safety. People first, economics second. You need to connect with your people. We haven't had a public health crisis of this scale in our lifetime, and it will need leaders to use both their head and their heart to successfully navigate this crisis and to enable their teams to be able to come out the other end. Yes, as a leader, it is imperative that you keep calm. However, being calm doesn't mean that you don't show emotion or compassion. When a crisis hits, the deepest and most needful parts of our human nature kick in. We want security, we want warmth, we want food, we want the absence of pain. Those lower echelons of Maslow's hierarchy are what become our priority. Without these basics, teams cease to function. And so as a leader, the first step is to make sure that you create that feeling of safety. And that comes by showing your human side. Each of us experiences this distress of the coronavirus in different and unique ways. And as we redesign remote workplace cultures, around those nuances, a key common thread exists along all our experiences. And it's this idea that not only do we want to feel physically safe, we want to feel psychologically safe. Research shows that psychological safety is a key component of collaboration. The more safety a team experiences, the more likely they are to collaborate effectively. And this is especially important for teams that are working remotely for the first time. So how then do we create this sense of psychological safety? There's a number of things that you can do as a leader that will help your team to feel safe. Firstly, in a survey that I conducted recently, I asked team members to share what they needed most from their leaders in this time of crisis. So the question was, what do you need most from your leaders in this time of crisis? And the feedback was heavily skewed towards the emotional as opposed to the technical and the rational. You must be available emotionally. Now, that may sound scary. It doesn't necessarily mean that you want to have sessions where you invite people to share their deepest, darkest self. But the reality is that somehow as a leader, you must provide an opportunity for people to share what they are going through as far as their emotions are concerned, how they are feeling about what they're going through. A great way to do this is to commit time, either daily, if possible, or perhaps weekly, to commit time where individuals can share the challenges that they are facing. You can utilize the roses and thorns methodology. Roses is where you talk about, the good that you are experiencing. And then thorns is talking about the challenges. What challenges are the members of the team facing? And what support do they need in order to navigate those challenges? And when you do roses and thorns, the idea is that when someone is sharing their thorns, when someone is sharing the challenges they are facing, they are supposed to indicate whether they are sharing just because they'd like to talk about it, or whether they are sharing and they would like individuals to help them, to provide solutions so that they can navigate those challenges. So how are you reaching out to your team to help them navigate the challenge? Remember, if the team is not feeling safe psychologically, they are less likely to work together and collaborate. You are less likely to have that collaboration that you were talking about, this idea that people will work together and everyone is clear on what they're supposed to do and everyone takes up their role fully to contribute to success, and that the teamwork is smooth and seamless. That is less likely to happen if the team is feeling unsafe. The second thing that will help to create that sense of psychological safety is that as a leader, you need to reach out to your team individually. You need to reach out to your team individually. However large your team is, you must make an effort to reach out to each individual one-to-one. Remember that it's really important to give that personal touch. Doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out conversation. And you can, if you're not able to make calls, reach out and send a personal note on WhatsApp. But personalize it. Connect with each member of the team. Reach out to them. You never know what you will discover when you take time to reach out. And when you're reaching out, it's not to have discussions about work. It's to connect with them and see how they're doing. The third thing is, what support are you giving as an organization? We are going through really tough times and employees may be struggling. So what support can you give? There are many little things that we can do that go a really long way to supporting your team as they navigate this season. I understand that we have organizations that are large and organizations that are small. And for smaller organizations, you may not be able to do much as far as finance is concerned. Perhaps just keeping employees and paying them a salary is actually all that you can do. And I know that your teams appreciate that. But if there is scope to do more, what else can you do? How else can you provide the support? And perhaps if you're not able to give financial support, the support you can give is the reassurance. I know an organization that has made a commitment to their staff that everyone will keep their jobs. They are not going to let anyone go. If you have the power to make that kind of decision, share that with your team. Help them to not be focused or be concerned about the fact that they may lose their job. And then lastly, as far as creating this sense of psychological safety is concerned, take the pressure off. A loss in productivity is not a worry reserved for managers. It makes employees feel uneasy too. It's a manager's job, it's a leader's job to normalize stress during uncertain times. Acknowledge that indeed this is a troubling time, and you anticipate that business right now might be slow and employees will be less productive. Recognizing that your employees are human and that they will be distracted right now will create more psychological safety. It is not business as usual. And I think it would be unrealistic and unfair if we were to carry on as though it was. We are in the midst of an unprecedented global crisis, and it will affect your teams in different ways. Make sure that you're going out of your way to create a culture where people feel safe. And the reality is that the payoff of creating this psychological safety is an environment where team members are willing to take risks, they are willing to share their ideas, they are willing to try and make mistakes even as they try, but they are willing to try to go the extra mile, to do everything that they possibly can to get their work done. And this only happens when we're able to build that trust and make sure that we create a sense of psychological safety. The other thing that we must do is we must align communication. When working remotely, if you recall, the research I shared showed that one of the biggest challenges is communication. The reality is that not everyone has the same idea of what effective communication is. If I give you an example, if we look at the word responsive, you might see responsive as replying within 2 days, whereas for someone else, responsive means responding within 2 hours. Those are both equally reasonable expectations, equally reasonable views. Neither is right or wrong. The reality is we have different expectations of what communication is. And so it's really important that as a leader, you spend time outlining or exploring with the team what communication looks like and aligning those thoughts. What are the new norms? In a crisis situation, previous communication norms may no longer be relevant. Perhaps people were never allowed to call on your mobile after certain hours unless it was urgent. But now that is something that has become the norm. Beyond that, who makes decisions? How are these decisions made? Who is involved? Does there need to be quorum? What is quorum? How are the decisions communicated once they have been made? How do you run meetings? How do you use email? How do you use personal devices? Who is responsible for calling clients? All of this needs to be discussed in detail. And as a leader, it is essential that you do not make any assumptions. Remember, the goal is to have the team collaborating, working well. We want seamless contributions from team members. We want everyone pulling together so that we can achieve the goals of the organization. And the reality is team members will see elements of this communication differently. So it's important that there's clarity. If there isn't clarity, this will affect the team's ability to work together. The more uncertainty there is around communication, the less likely communication is going to happen the way that you would like it to. And communication is at the heart of teamwork and collaboration. So it's really important that you are mindful of how you are doing communication. And in this season of crisis, and where teams are working remotely, communication becomes even more important. If you've attended each of the webinars, you will note that I think for every week, communication has been one of the tips that I have shared. So whether you're talking about driving motivation, whether you're talking about sales and growing your business, even in this time of crisis, whether you're talking about interacting with your customers and providing support to them, communication is at the heart of it. And communication is definitely at the heart of collaboration. The last thing I would share is that you must have fun together. And again, I talked about this when I was talking about driving, igniting motivation. That in order to keep your team engaged and motivated, you must have fun together. And I think this is exactly the same if we want to ensure teamwork. The reality is that work is more than just work. Besides taking care of tasks and obligations, employees bond and spend great times together. They laugh together and they cry and they share moments of their lives. This isn't all lost when we're working remotely, but it is a lot more difficult to keep these moments alive. And so as a leader, you must be intentional about ensuring that there are moments where people are able to connect and have fun. These water cooler moments, as we call them. Your remote team needs to have ways that they can bond around things that are unrelated to work. You need to set up a virtual water cooler for sharing non-work related and just for fun content. And we spoke about this when we were talking about igniting motivation. One of the things that I recommended to those of you leading teams is that you have a WhatsApp group that is purely for fun. And obviously, members of the team are more than happy to opt out of it if they wish to. But have a WhatsApp group that's just for fun, for sharing light moments. Obviously, you can agree on some rules and set some boundaries on what is appropriate to share. But this is the space where individuals go to share about interactions they had with their children and how their children are driving them crazy. This is where they go to share, the challenges that they are facing running the household without help for those who do not have their help with them. This is where they ask questions about situations that may be going on. This is where they just share fun things. And this is where you can have discussions about how you will have a weekly get-together as a team. And I would encourage that as a leader, if you do have a social space, that you participate in the social space and show your team that you value this opportunity to be able to connect beyond the work. Because in the office, you would connect beyond the work. So it's really important that you're making time to really create that sense of community. And what will happen is when we create that sense of community, when the team feel that they are still connected together in this way, this spills over in how the team works together. So the 3 tips for today. Number 1 is be human and create a sense of psychological safety. Number 2, align communication. Make sure that you are on the same page with your team. And number 3, have fun together. Make sure that you have fun together. Emotional intelligence is being smarter with feelings. And really, emotional intelligence is at the heart of leadership. Research shows that leaders who are high in emotional intelligence are more successful. In the difficult times, it's easy for the soft stuff to go away, to be put aside, to be forgotten about. But the reality is, in the difficult times, the soft stuff, the emotional intelligence, is what is required more. I mentioned earlier that in a survey I conducted, asking members of teams to share what it is they wanted most from their leaders in this time of crisis, the feedback was overwhelmingly that it is the emotional side that they need. It is the soft side that they need more than the technical. It's in times like these that your team needs you to be emotionally intelligent. And what I love about emotional intelligence is that emotional intelligence is a skill. Emotional intelligence is a skill. And that means it is something that can be developed. Emotional intelligence is a skill, which means it is something that can be developed. Everyone can develop greater emotional intelligence. I want to take this time to do our raffle before I go to questions. I want to take this time to do our raffle before I go to questions. So, Anne, I'd like to ask you to unmute yourself. Anne, I'd like to ask you to unmute yourself. I trust that you've had a chance to put all the names in a hat, and we'd like to pull out 3 names. We'd like to pull out 3 names from all the participants, who are online. And thank you again for joining us. So all the participants who are online, Anne is going to shake the names together and she is going to share. Anne, if you could, are you able to turn on your video so we can see you as you do the draw? Lest anyone feels that it was biased in any way. Karibu, Anne. Anne, are you online?
Hi, Mucha.
Hi, Anne.
Hi, everyone. Give me a second, kindly. I'm folding on the names.
You're still folding the names? Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. Elsie, I can see your message that you can't hear, but I think it might be you. Yeah. Okay, Elsie, thanks. I can see your message that you will log off and log back on. If there's anyone else who's having challenges hearing me, just type it in the chat box so that I can see that it's not just one person. Okay, so allow me to take questions at this time, and then we'll go back to the draw. So allow me to take questions at this time. Thank you for sharing. Okay. All right. So I have a question here from Christine who says, EQ is data. Please elaborate. Thank you very much for that question, Christine. So emotional intelligence is data. What that means is that emotional intelligence is insight. It's information. Let me rephrase that. Emotions are data. Emotions are data. Emotional intelligence is being able to pick up on that data. So emotions are data. Emotions are insights. It's information coming from yourself to yourself, giving you insight. And often we ignore, we suppress what we are feeling. So let me give you an example. Emotions that make us feel uncomfortable are usually emotions that we like to ignore. One of those is fear. As we are going through this season of crisis, there are very many of us who are feeling afraid of the unknown. And rather than unpacking that fear, excuse me, we are ignoring that data. The idea is emotions are data. So what you need to do is peel back the layers, unpack what that insight is giving you. So you're feeling fear. Why are you feeling that fear? What is it that you're afraid of? When we start to peel back the layers and ask ourselves those questions and dig a little deeper to understand the emotion, we're able to use that insight that we gain to move forward. When I ask myself what it is I am afraid of, and I ask myself what is the worst that can happen, when I begin to identify what those things are, I'm better able to find a way to plan around it. Emotions are data. And the idea is I must look at that data and unpack it. So again, if I continue with my example of fear, I may be feeling fear that my business will not survive. That my business will not survive. That is, if this season goes on for a lot longer, my business will not survive. So now that I am aware of that fear, I can unpack it a little further. And I can ask myself, what are some of the things that I can do to try and support my business? What are some of the things I can do to ensure that what I fear doesn't actually happen? And that is how emotions are data. Christine, I hope that that has helped with your question. Nyakato is saying, I love the idea of a fun WhatsApp group. Awesome. Please make sure that you set it up. Ken says, how do you deliver bad news? For instance, supposing we have to lay off or have salary cuts. That's a really great question. And I think that the reality is that we must be honest in this season. We must be honest with our teams. And so what I would suggest is that it's really important to be honest ongoing. It's a lot harder to take bad news when it comes as a surprise, when it comes out of the blue. So Ken, what I would encourage and what I've been doing with my team is we've been having monthly catch-ups where we have a discussion about what's happening, where the business is, the outlook for the month ahead, and what the potential repercussions are. So I would encourage that you start by having honest conversations with the team. I think the team is aware that these are difficult times and they're aware that there can be implications for it. So what I would encourage is have an ongoing, honest conversation. Don't leave it until it's now time for you to cut salaries or terminate individuals. So that's the first thing. Let it be an ongoing conversation. So as I mentioned, what we've been doing as a team is we've been talking about this is the situation we are in, this is the forecast for the month ahead, and these are the possible implications. Secondly, where possible, have frank conversations with members of your team and give options. Discuss the options that may be available. Discuss the options that may be available. And you may be surprised at what the team is willing to give up and what the team is willing to contribute. Because I think that every member of the team is mindful that we're going through a difficult time. And in order for the organization to survive, there are changes that will need to be made. So if you're thinking that you may need to do salary cuts, have a discussion with individuals one-on-one and have an open and frank conversation. And like I said, you will be surprised at what team members will be willing to give up and what they are willing to commit to the organization. And then lastly, where you need to let people go, again, I think just be very honest. And, perhaps what you can do is have a conversation or discuss whether or not it's possible rather than having people, letting people go, whether you can have the option of unpaid leave. A lot of it depends on the situation you find yourself in as an organization. I think we find ourselves in very tough times. And, employees are aware of that. So I think that's what I would say. But the thing I really want to emphasize is don't let it be a surprise. Have that tough conversation ongoing. As the leader of a team, as a leader of an organization, as a leader, as someone who may be running your own business, it's really important that you are honest and upfront. Emotional intelligence is not about being soft. It's really important that we're able to have tough conversations when they are necessary. And I really want to emphasize, let it not come by surprise. I hope that helps, Ken. Another question here is, how do you deal with feelings that are revealed by team members you may not have the capacity to help? That's a really great question, Nyakato. Thank you very much for asking that. I think that one of the things that I would encourage team leaders to do is to build a network of support, so that where you are not able to support, where you are not able to provide the support required, you may be able to refer them to someone who can. So build a network of support. Large organizations have either internally or they have outsourced the function of someone who provides emotional and mental support. So large organizations have this. So either a company psychologist, or they have outsourced, those kind of psychology services, and they allow, they've empowered members of their teams to go and utilize those services. But the reality is that for smaller organizations, this may not be something that we're able to do. So go online. There are so many support mechanisms that are actually available, and some of them are available for free. And make that something that's available to your team. So let your team know that in this time of crisis, someone may be going through something and they are not able to navigate it. So this is how you are providing support. You give them access. So give them access either to an individual, give them access to an online network where they can go and find the support they need. The reality is that in very many organizations, we are doing as much as we can to deal with the physical challenges, to deal with the financial challenge to this epidemic. But there is going to be an emotional fallout. I truly believe that the members of our team are going to need emotional support to get out on the other side, which is why I talked about creating a space, creating a culture of psychological safety. And that means that anything that you are not able to give, as a leader, try and find where someone can go, so that at least you can refer them to get help, because this is really important. I hope I've answered that question. Susie says, I may have missed this, so if you answered, please repeat. What do we do in the Fun WhatsApp group? So the Fun WhatsApp group really is where team members can connect and just connect socially. If you think about it, in your organization, teams have the opportunity to connect with each other. Teams have the opportunity to hang out with each other. And perhaps for your organization, you even do social things together. And now that teams are working remotely, or even for those who are going to the office, we've done away with some of those things that we do socially. So the idea of the Fun WhatsApp group is that it is just for sharing, and you can set boundaries, right? So you can decide that it's okay to share forwards, but the forwards must be within this certain boundary. What I would encourage is that you have a discussion with the team about what those boundaries are. This is where individuals can ask questions that are not work-related. This is where individuals can share specific challenges they're going through. I mean, if someone is challenged with working and supporting their children from home as they're doing online learning, this is where a member of the team can just say, okay, I'm up to my wit's end with my child. So it's It's for having social interaction, the things that you would normally do if you were in the office and able to connect with each other. And it should be for non-work things. It should not be for work. And what I said is, as the leader, you need to interact as well. You need to participate. I wouldn't encourage the leader to be the lead in the fun WhatsApp group, or let's call it the social WhatsApp group. I would encourage you to nominate a social secretary, let's call it, who will be in charge of that group and monitoring it and making sure people abide by whatever the boundaries that you have set as a group. And even having that discussion about what boundaries should be set. I would encourage you to have a member of the team do it. I wouldn't encourage the leader to be the lead on that group, all right? However, I would encourage the leader to interact just as much as everyone else. So to share, if you've agreed that forwards can be shared, to share appropriate forwards, to comment about your day and what you're going through, to share an experience that you may have had. So that's what the social WhatsApp group is for. Susie, I hope that helps. How do you motivate further an individual who does not participate in team engagement or WhatsApp communication? People are different, Victoria, and I think that what we have to realize is that people are different. And so I would encourage that you think through the personality of this individual. Is that the way they behave normally? So normally they're not the ones who tend to share quickly in team meetings. Then if that's their normal behavior, then I would encourage reaching out one-on-one and just opening the line of communication one-on-one. So that's just connecting with them. It could be on WhatsApp, letting them know that you are there, you would like to support them, and they should just reach out if they need anything. And then you can just make it a thing where you do a regular check-in. So the following week, you could just say, here's another check-in. And you continue that even if they don't respond. Because that could be their personality. And the reality is, even if they're not responding, they may still appreciate the fact that you're reaching out to them. Some people are not good in groups. They are better one-on-one. So for that individual, I would say reach out one-on-one with them and just let them know that you would like to support them and that you're available should they need any assistance. Ken says the guidelines and management of social forums are also a result of organizational culture. Very true. The concept of having fun doesn't just happen, it is built. That's a very, very good observation, Ken. What I would say though is if in the past you've not necessarily had a planned social framework for your organization, there's no reason why this COVID season isn't a chance for you to have it. There's no reason why you can create new norms. And the reality is, yes, you create those new norms. It may be a little weird. It may be a little uncomfortable. Fair enough. But I think it's worth trying. And this is why I say that what you want to do is you don't want to spearhead something. You want to spearhead a conversation where you invite your team to talk about how they want to remain in touch socially. You might find, and in an earlier webinar, there's a team that talked about how they have a Zoom meeting on Friday evening and it's a social. So on Friday, a certain time, people log in and those who want to participate log in and it's a social. And they may play a game online, different members of the team lead the social. So yes, I think through what are your norms, but even in this period of crisis, you can create new norms as the leader. What you want to do is just make sure that those new norms that you're trying to create, you have the team come together to create them. Because if it's you driving it and you just say, okay, we're setting up a WhatsApp group, this is going to be social, every day this is what I'd like you to do, that may not go over so well. So engage with the team and find out how they want to connect socially. All right, Susie, question answered. Wondering if you already have a WhatsApp group, do we open it up to the fun stuff or create another? Susie, I would actually create another one, to be perfectly honest, because the challenge is if you open up your work WhatsApp group to the fun stuff, then sometimes it can actually take away from the work. That said, teams are different. There are some teams who have one WhatsApp group that is for work and they've always used that socially anyway. If that's the case for you, then that's good. The idea is to create a platform for your team to interact socially. So what I would suggest is, and I'm sure many teams have WhatsApp groups, what I would suggest is perhaps on that WhatsApp group, you can introduce the idea of having something that you do socially and ask the team to share what they think. In a previous webinar, the leader shared the idea of a social WhatsApp group and the team loved it. And so they immediately set up a group. But like I said, another individual shared that for them, what they agreed was that they would have a Zoom call once a week. So I think a lot of it is driven by your team. The key is you want to create social space. You want to create a space where people can connect socially. So you want to let that be driven by the team and allow the team to determine what that looks like. So in your case, you may find that, when you have that conversation and make that suggestion, the team says, let's do a WhatsApp group, or the team says, let's do a Zoom call. So it depends on the team. I hope that answers that question. So I don't see any other questions. Thank you so much for your time. We are at 10 o'clock, so I don't want to keep you much longer. And I'd like to invite you so that we can do our raffle and then we can wrap up. As Anne readies herself, allow me just to share. As I mentioned, we are not done with everything that we are doing. We will be having a webinar. We'll be having an EQ Cafe. And because you are part of our network, we will share the information about the EQ Cafe. And we'll also be having our annual conference, which will be on the 2nd of July. And the theme for the conference is Organizational Vitality, Thriving in the New Normal Post-COVID-19. So please watch this space, continue interacting with us, and we will make sure that you are in the loop of all the conversations we are having. If this is the first time you're interacting with us and you'd like to join our mailing list so that you can get information about our events, please do share your email in the chat box so that we can add you to our mailing list and you can stay in the loop of all that we are doing. As I mentioned, we'll have an EQ Cafe. If you've not participated in our EQ Cafe in the past, the EQ Cafe is a fun, hands-on, experiential series that we run on a quarterly basis. And the theme for this quarter is uncertainty. Really excited to have that EQ Cafe. And we'll be doing that in collaboration with SBM Bank. And as I mentioned, we will have our conference on the 2nd of July. Thank you to those who shared their email address. We'll make sure we add you to our mailing list. And over to you for our draw.
So the names are all in here. I'll just go ahead and mix, give it a good mix. And I'm picking the first name.
I need to take a picture of you picking a name.
I don't know if you can be able to see. The first winner is Elsie Kagimbi.
Clap hands for Elsie. Elsie, well done. You are our first winner. Elsie, the first prize was the EQ assessment, but I think since you've done it previously, I'll reshuffle and we can give you the training perhaps. Well done, Elsie. We'll have a conversation, but that was initially, it was meant to be a prize for the EQ assessment. So Elsie, I'll have a chat with you one-on-one and we'll see if you'd like to exchange that. So the first prize goes to Elsie. Clap hands for Elsie. That's the EQ assessment. The next prize is the next thing we're giving away is the access to the invitation only part of our conference. As you know, we're having our conference on the 2nd of July. Prior to the conference, from 7 to 9, we'll have an invitation-only CEO breakfast. So let's see who gets that. Go ahead, Anne.
Our second winner is Victoria Mulu.
Hey! Congratulations to Victoria. I will be in touch with you to discuss your prize. Congratulations, Victoria, and I look forward to hosting you at that CEO breakfast. And then our third prize is for the training. We are hosting a training at the end of this month, and it is a TOT, so a training for trainers on how to really connect, engage, and empower your learners online. All right, so who gets that one? Please go ahead, Anne.
Beatrice Omolo.
Wow, well done to Beatrice Omolo. Awesome, thank you so much. All right, so we'll be in touch with all those who have won the prizes. Elsie, as I said, we'll have a conversation about what we can exchange your prize for, or you might make a decision to gift it to someone else. So thank you so much for participating in this, our final in the series. As I mentioned, this is not the end of what we are doing online. We will continue to support our ecosystem, to support our community with our initiatives. So please watch this space. I look forward to having all of you participate in the EQ Cafe and to have all of you participate in the EQ conference. So thank you so much for joining us today. Go out and empower your teams with the information that you have learned so that they will be able to work together, to collaborate, to communicate, and so that they can thrive through this season of COVID. Thank you and God bless you.
God bless you too, Mucha.
Thank you.
Thank you.